Before we had the internet, before we even had reliable encyclopedias, we had Pliny the Elder. Imagine your most curious uncle, the one who corners you at family gatherings to share fun facts he heard from a friend of a friend who once knew a sailor. Now imagine that uncle decided to write everything down, creating a 37-volume work called Naturalis Historia, or Natural History. That was Pliny. He was a Roman commander, an author, and a man with an insatiable and often indiscriminate appetite for information. He cataloged everything from botany to astronomy, from mining techniques to the proper way to cure a headache using, say, the powdered horn of a unicorn. I'm paraphrasing, but only slightly. Pliny's approach to fact-checking was, to put it mildly, relaxed. If he heard a story, no matter how outlandish, he was inclined to include it. Let us now turn our attention to the star of our show, the Achlis. According to Pliny, this magnificent beast resided on a remote island in the Baltic Sea, probably Scandinavia. At first glance, it might not seem too out of the ordinary. Pliny describes it as being roughly the size and shape of an elk. We can picture that. Elks are real. They live in northern climates. But this is where the resemblance to anything in a modern nature documentary abruptly ends. The Achlis was nature's first draft, scribbled on a napkin. Its most distinguishing feature was an enormous, swollen upper lip. Pliny says the lip was so oversized the animal couldn't graze normally. To eat, it had to walk backward, dragging its colossal snoot along the ground, scooping up vegetation as it went. An animal the size of a moose with a lip so pendulous it moonwalks through lunch. Less majestic, more slapstick comedian with an allergic reaction. But the oddities didn't stop at its mouth. Coat shaggy and nondescript. Demeanor reportedly melancholy. General vibe, profound awkwardness. Whatever its origin, the Achlis shows how a tiny truth can blossom into a gloriously weird legend. Let's delve deeper into this truly spectacular upper lip, for it is the centerpiece of the Achlis's absurdity. Pliny doesn't just say the lip is large, he implies it's a genuine inconvenience, a biological feature that has become a full-blown lifestyle problem. Imagine having a nose so long you had to walk backward to see where your feet were going. The Achlis lived this reality every single day. Its primary tool for eating was also its biggest obstacle. It was a fundamental design flaw that dictated the creature's entire existence. Was it prehensile, like an elephant's trunk, capable of deftly plucking choice leaves? Or was it just a floppy, numb appendage that indiscriminately shoved grass, dirt, the occasional startled frog, into its mouth? How did two Achlises greet each other? A polite nod would be difficult, as it might result in one of them tripping over its own face. Courtship must have been a particularly delicate affair, a dance of backward steps and careful maneuvering to avoid a catastrophic lip-tangling incident. It seems destined for a life of minor indignities and slapstick mishaps. Nature, for all its beautiful complexity, is ruthlessly efficient. Evolution doesn't typically favor features that make eating a logistical nightmare. An animal that has to walk away from its dinner to eat it is an animal that is not long for this world. This is the big, blinking sign that tells us we've strayed from zoology into folklore. As if a giant, cumbersome lip wasn't enough of a burden, Pliny decided to saddle the poor Achlis with another debilitating condition. It had no joints in its hind legs. None. Its back legs were supposedly rigid, like a pair of stilts. This meant the Achlis could never lie down. To sleep, it had to find a sturdy tree, lean against it, and drift off into what one can only assume were anxious dreams of falling over. A forest full of elk-sized creatures propped against trees like forgotten bicycles. This peculiar detail is not unique to the Achlis. Ancient writers seem to have a strange fascination with jointless animals. Julius Caesar himself described an elk-like creature in Germany's Hercynian forest that also had unbendable legs. This suggests the stiff-legged beast was a recurring motif in European folklore. No large mammal could survive without the ability to bend its legs. Joints are rather important for, well, moving. How did an Achlis stand up if it ever accidentally fell over? Would it just lie there, flailing like an overturned beetle, waiting for a friend to come and give it a push? The unbendable legs serve a narrative purpose. They explain why the creature is so easy to hunt, transforming it from a formidable beast into a tragic, easily outsmarted victim. It's a clever plot device. even if it makes absolutely no sense from a biological standpoint. Given its unfortunate combination of a giant lip and stiff legs, you might think the Achlis was an easy target for hunters. And, well, you'd be right. Pliny provides a very specific hunting manual, one that relies on exploiting the creature's bizarre sleeping habits. The method is less a brave hunt and more a cruel but undeniably clever prank. Here's the plan. First, the hunter would scout the forest to find the Achlis's favorite leaning tree. Just look for a tree with a permanent, elk-shaped dent in the bark. Once the designated sleeping spot was identified, the hunter would wait for the Achlis to wander off for its daily backward grazing session. Then, they would sneak up to the tree and saw partway through the trunk, weakening it just enough so that it would still stand, but would buckle under any significant weight. The trap was now set. A simple yet diabolical piece of ancient engineering. Later that night, the unsuspecting Achlis would return from a long day of clumsy eating, find its trusty tree and lean against it for a much-needed rest. The weakened tree would groan, splinter, and then crash to the ground, taking the rigid-legged Achlis with it. Because of its unbendable hind legs, the creature would be completely unable to get back on its feet, waiting for the hunter to return in the morning to claim their prize. It turns the hunt into a scene from a silent comedy. Let's take a moment to speculate on the daily struggles of the Achlis. Its life must have been a continuous series of small, frustrating challenges. Waking up would be the first hurdle. After a night spent leaning precariously against a tree, it would have to carefully push off without losing its balance. A misstep could lead to a catastrophic fall, leaving it stranded until a fellow Achlis could offer a supportive nudge. The morning routine would likely involve a series of stiff-legged stretches, followed by the slow, arduous process of finding a suitable patch of grass for its backward breakfast. Imagine a herd of Achlises attempting to navigate a dense forest, tripping over roots they couldn't see past their own lips. The chaos of a dozen backward-walking, stiff-legged animals trying to stay together would be immense. Perhaps they developed a complex system of ear twitches and tail flicks to convey messages. The Achlis probably had to find gently sloping banks and awkwardly bend its front half down while its rigid back end remained perched. Perhaps its colossal lip was an excellent flotation device, allowing it to cross deep rivers with ease. Maybe its stiff legs gave it incredible stability in high winds, or, more likely, perhaps its meat was just not very tasty and predators couldn't be bothered. Whatever the case, the life of an Achlis was surely one of quiet, clumsy resilience in the face of overwhelming anatomical absurdity. A testament to our ability to imagine the outrageous. It's a wonder the species survived long enough for Pliny to even hear about it. So, where did Pliny get this wonderfully weird story? He attributes the tale to the inhabitants of Scandinavia, a region that, to the Romans, was the mysterious, fog-shrouded edge of the known world. This is a classic element of ancient monster-making. The strangest creatures always live far, far away. The most likely candidate for the real-life inspiration behind the Achlis is, of course, the moose, Alces alces in Latin, which sounds suspiciously like Achlis. It has a distinctly large, fleshy, overhanging upper lip, or proboscis. Consider the journey of the story. A Scandinavian hunter tells a Germanic trader about the strange algae he saw. The trader, whose language is different, repeats the story to a Roman merchant, emphasizing the strangest parts to make it more interesting. The nose becomes so big it has to walk backward to eat. The long legs become so stiff they have no joints. By the time the story reaches Pliny in Rome, passed through half a dozen languages and imaginations, the humble moose has transformed into the mythical Achlis. Think of the narwhal, whose single long tusk gave rise to the unicorn myth, or how manatee sightings by lonely sailors likely fueled legends of mermaids. The Achlis is simply another example of the human tendency to embellish the unfamiliar. The ancient world was not a world of photographs and nature documentaries. It was a world of stories. A creature with unbendable knees and a lip the size of a loaf of bread was always more valuable than a boring, factual description of a moose. This process of legendary transformation is not unique to our stiff-legged friend. The Achlis is simply another delightful twist of language and imagination. The story of the Achlis, as silly as it is, speaks to a fundamental part of human nature, our enduring fascination with the monstrous and the unknown. For as long as we have been telling stories, We have been populating the dark corners of the map with fantastic beasts. From the gorgons of ancient Greece to the dragons of medieval lore, from the kraken in the sea to Bigfoot in the woods, every culture has its menagerie of creatures that defy nature. These monsters serve a purpose. They are a way for us to explore our fears and our sense of wonder about the world. Creatures like the Achlis represent the other, the strange, the foreign, the things that live just beyond the reach of our understanding. In Pliny's time, the forests of Scandinavia were a place of mystery. Who knew what lived in those cold, dark woods? By inventing an animal as bizarre as the Achlis, storytellers were essentially saying, "It's a weird place out there." There's also a simple joy in the sheer creativity of it all. Even today, in our hyper-scientific world, we haven't lost our appetite for monsters. We may have debunked the Achlis, but we still have our own modern myths, from aliens at Area 51 to the Loch Ness Monster. It seems that no matter how much we learn, there's a part of us that wants to believe there's still something out there we haven't found yet. Something strange and wonderful waiting just over the horizon. The Achlis is a charming relic from an era when that belief was not just possible, but perfectly natural. These stories entertain us, they make us laugh, and they remind us that the world doesn't always have to make perfect sense. Keep a little space for the impossible. In the end, it doesn't really matter whether the Achlis was a garbled description of a moose or a complete fabrication. Its true value lies not in its biological reality, but in its endurance as a wonderfully weird story. Pliny the Elder, in his quest to catalog everything, became one of history's greatest curators of delightful nonsense, and the Achlis is arguably his finest acquisition. The tale encourages us to approach history with a sense of humor and with wonder. It invites us to look at ancient texts, not just as sources of fact, but as windows into the minds of the people who wrote them. What did they fear? What did they find amusing? What did they believe about the world beyond their own borders? The Achlis tells us they believed in a world that was quirky, unpredictable, and far from fully explored. And frankly, that world sounds a lot more fun than one where every animal is perfectly adapted. So let's raise a glass to the Achlis, the clumsy, backward-walking, stiff-legged marvel of the ancient world. Let's celebrate the storytellers who dreamed it up and the writers like Pliny who preserved it. These tales are part of our collective human heritage, a testament to our undying creativity and our perpetual search for wonder. They remind us to keep our minds open, our sense of humor intact, and to always be skeptical of anyone who claims to have seen an animal with unbendable knees. And as we close the book on this particular beast, let's keep a little space in our minds for the possibility of the impossible. Because sometimes, the most memorable truths are the ones that are completely made up.